He is sealed inside a leather sack with a wild dog snarling in the dark, a venomous snake coiling at his feet, a screeching monkey clawing and biting, and even a frantic rooster flapping its wings in terror. Then, the sack is tossed into the river, all of them alive. This isn't a nightmare or a scene from a horror movie. This was ancient Rome's most twisted punishment, reserved for the most unforgivable crime of all: parricide, the murder of one's own parent. Why would a civilization as sophisticated as Rome devise such a grotesque end for a criminal? And what does this chilling penalty tell us about their values and about how far we've come? Today, we're unraveling the dark tale of Poena Cullei, literally, the punishment of the sack. It's a story that will plunge us into the depths of Roman cruelty and justice. By the end, you might look at your own family and our modern laws in a new light, perhaps with gratitude that this punishment is a thing of the past. Brace yourself. This journey through Rome's darkest law will be harrowing, suspenseful, and absolutely eye-opening. Imagine ancient Rome, nearly 2,000 years ago. Roman society was fiercely patriarchal and valued family above all. The father, the pater familias, ruled the household with absolute authority. Respect for one's parents was not just a virtue, it was the law of gods and men. To kill your father or mother was unthinkable, a crime so monstrous that it shook the very foundation of Roman civilization. Parricide wasn't just murder, it was sacrilege against family and society. Ordinary murderers might be exiled or swiftly executed, but a person who killed their own parent, the Romans believed that person did not deserve to walk on the same earth as the rest of us. They needed to be completely cast out from the human world, erased. So how do you erase a person in antiquity? The Romans had a terrifying answer: Poena Cullei. In 101 BC, Roman chronicles tell of a notorious criminal named Publicius Malleolus, the first recorded parricide in Roman history. His crime: murdering his own mother. The Roman authorities decided to make him an example that would haunt everyone's nightmares. Malleolus was sentenced to the penalty of the sack. According to the records, they beat him bloody with rods, then sewed him up inside a heavy leather sack and hurled him into the sea. No trial by sword, no quick poison. Instead, a death that denied him even a final glimpse of the world. He would die in utter darkness, alone. This was how seriously Rome took the crime of parricide. At first, the punishment of the sack was simple. The murderer and the sack plunged into water to drown. But as the years passed, the Romans refined this cruel ritual, making it even more elaborate and horrifying. They added symbolic touches, macabre flourishings of theater to fit the ultimate crime. The condemned person's head was covered in a wolf's hide or a leather bag before execution. Imagine that. They wouldn't even allow a parricide to look upon the world or be seen by it. Covering his head was like declaring him no longer human, as if he already belonged to the realm of beasts or the dead. They also placed wooden clogs on his feet, so he would never again touch the earth, not even with bare feet. Every part of this ritual screamed that this person was being cast out of the human realm entirely. And then there were the animals. Over time, the Romans decided that dying alone wasn't enough. The criminal had to die in a crowded, writhing mass of terrified creatures. Each animal was carefully chosen for its symbolism and its menace. First, a snake, usually a viper, was added to the sack. The viper was believed to do something truly unnatural. According to legend, baby vipers killed their own mother as they were born. So this snake was the mirror of the crime, a slithering symbol of a creature that kills its parent. Next, a monkey was thrown in. To the Romans, monkeys were chaotic, almost crazy creatures, a distorted caricature of a human. The monkey in that sack represents madness and the loss of reason. A fitting companion for someone who would do something as insane as kill their parent. Then came a rooster. Yes, a rooster, flapping and scratching. Roosters symbolized wakefulness and aggression. In the context of this punishment, the rooster's frantic energy and sharp claws added to the chaos, a sign of violent bloodlust unleashed. And finally, the most seemingly ordinary creature with perhaps the most vicious role: a dog. In ancient Rome, dogs, especially stray or feral dogs, were seen as unclean scavengers, often associated with wild rage or rabies. A mad dog in a confined space is pure fear: snapping jaws, foaming mouth, unpredictable lunges. The dog brought rabid ferocity into the sack, as if embodying the rage and savagery of the crime itself. Now picture the scene. The execution is set to take place by the riverbank. The water below is flowing cold and indifferent. Roman officials are gathered, and perhaps a crowd hovers at a distance, drawn by morbid curiosity. The condemned, our parricide, is already beaten and bleeding, his head bagged in wolfskin, his feet clumsy in wooden shoes, barely able to stand. He knows something horrific is coming, but nothing can prepare him for this. The executioners bring out a large leather sack, sturdy and sewn with tough cords. It lies open, gaping like the mouth of some great beast, ready to swallow him. With a curt signal, the order is given: begin. The first attendant grabs a squirming sack of his own and dumps its contents into the leather sack on the ground. A collective gasp, then a hiss. A snake slithers out, its scales catching the sunlight, before it disappears into the gloom of the sack's bottom. The condemned man flinches instinctively. He can't see it. His head is covered. But he hears the unmistakable dry rasping of scales on leather. His breathing quickens. Next, two men struggle to shove a howling dog into the sack. The dog is wild-eyed, a half-starved mongrel snapping at anything that moves. It vanishes into the sack with a growl, and the bag jerks and shakes from inside as the dog scrambles in the darkness. Imagine the terror of hearing that enraged animal panting and growling just a few feet away, unseen. As if that weren't enough, now they bring forth a screeching monkey, limbs flailing. The creature is terrified. It's never felt such panic being grabbed and hurled into darkness. It claws frantically at the air as it's thrust in. The sack bellows outward as the monkey inside leaps onto the dog's back, perhaps, or scrambles up the sides, desperate for an exit that isn't there. Finally, a wriggling burlap cage is upended, and a flapping rooster drops in, squawking and fluttering its wings in a frenzy of feathers. The executioners quickly pull the sack's mouth closed, just enough so the poor rooster doesn't fly right back out. Now all those creatures are together in one confined space, hissing, barking, screeching, flapping. The sack shudders violently on the ground. You can only imagine the cacophony inside, the monkey's shrill screams, the dog's vicious snarls, the snake's tail slapping against the sack, the rooster's wings beating against bodies. It's a living nightmare, and the nightmare is about to become the parricide's own. The officials force the condemned man towards the sack. Perhaps he fights. Who wouldn't? But he's bound and weakened from the beating. In moments, they shove him down into the opening of the sack. He disappears into that writhing hell, and the opening is pulled shut tight by several strong arms, sewing and knotting the leather cord. One can only imagine his first seconds inside. It's utterly dark. The heat and stench from the animals hits him immediately. The smell of wild fur, wet feathers, urine, fear. He's gasping, panicked, blind under the wolfskin hood and the absolute black of the leather sack. Something sharp rakes across his face, the monkey's nails, perhaps, and he yells in pain. In the cramped darkness, the dog's teeth clamp onto his arm, or maybe his leg, savaging in blind terror. He tries to shove it away, but his hands are tied, and the animal's weight is on him. The snake, now thoroughly agitated, winds itself around his thigh, its muscular coils tightening as it seeks an escape. He can feel the snake's scales sliding on his skin, wrapping tighter, and he thrashes instinctively. There is no room to move, barely enough to writhe in agony. The rooster's claws scratch at his neck as it scrambles over his shoulder, its wings battering his head. Inside that sack, every sound is amplified. The dog's snarls by his ear, the monkey's insane chattering, his own muffled screams mixing with the rooster's shrieks. It's a chaos beyond imagination. Outside, the executioners waste no time. 4 men hoist the sack, heavy now with a man and 4 animals struggling inside, and carry it to the edge of the water. The crowd, if there is one, watches in horrified silence. This spectacle is almost beyond belief, even for them. Some may avert their eyes, others stare wide-eyed, morbidly transfixed by the horror unfolding. The officials likely read out the crime one last time, a grim reminder of why this man deserves what's coming. And then, with a unanimous heave, they toss the bulging sack off the ledge into the river. For a split second, the sack hangs in the air, twisting as the living things inside tumble over one another. Then splash! It hits the water's surface and disappears below in a burst of foam and bubbles. The river closes over it and a few ripples fan out. Then almost nothing. The sack, weighed down by its living cargo, sinks. Imagine the final moments inside. The instant the cold water crashes in, the animals go into a frenzy. Freezing water soaks through the leather, through clothes, through fur and feathers. The dog yelps and snaps wildly as water fills its mouth. The rooster's squawk is cut short as it gulps water. The monkey clings desperately to the only thing it can, the man's body, screeching until the water silences it too. The snake thrashes, coils tightening in instinctive fear as the water invades its space. And the condemned man? Terror beyond comprehension. One moment he's feeling the prick of fangs and claws, the next he's plunging into icy darkness. Water rushes up around him from all sides. He tries to hold his breath, but in his panic he already inhaled water when he screamed. He's choking, lungs burning. He can't see, he can't breathe, he can't move without an animal tearing at him. Perhaps the viper finds his flesh in those frenzied seconds and delivers a final venomous bite. Perhaps the dog's jaws are still locked on his limb, or the monkey is climbing on his shoulders, trying futilely to keep its head above the rising water inside the sack. It hardly matters. In moments, water floods his mouth and nose and his body convulses. The world goes silent and black. On the riverbank, only a few bubbles rise to the surface. Maybe one of the animals manages a last kick that brings the sack briefly to view, or maybe a muffled scream escapes into the open air. But soon, everything is still. The sack sinks to the bottom, carrying with it a small collection of corpses. Man, monkey, dog, snake, rooster, intertwined in a watery grave. The parricide's existence has literally been bagged up and erased from the world. This was the terrifying fate that Roman law decreed for those who shed the blood of their own parents. It's hard to believe any society could enforce something so ghastly, yet for the Romans it was a statement of absolute justice. By inflicting such a dramatic, symbol-laden death, they sent a clear message. Some crimes were so unnatural that the perpetrator had to be banished from nature itself. Drowning a man with beasts meant he wouldn't even die among fellow humans. Denying him a normal burial, or any burial at all, meant his memory was polluted and lost. Mixing his remains with animals was the ultimate humiliation, as if saying, "You acted lower than a beast, so you'll die with the beasts." The symbolism ran deep. The elements of this execution, earth, water, beasts, were all chosen to cleanse Rome of a great impurity. The water was supposed to wash away the sin of parricide from the land. The fact that the man never touched ground again, thanks to those wooden clogs and the drowning at sea, meant Mother Earth herself was kept clean of his defilement. The Romans even used black oxen to drag the cart, carrying the sack to the water, according to some accounts. Black, the color of funeral and impurity, pulling the accursed toward his end. Every step of this punishment was like a dark ritual to purge an evil from the world. Now, you might be wondering, did the Romans actually do this often? Or was it more of a legendary boogeyman to scare would-be criminals? The truth is, even in ancient times, this punishment was rare. It's so elaborate and logistically nightmarish that it probably wasn't carried out frequently. In earlier times, if someone committed parricide, sometimes they were simply thrown to wild beasts in the arena or executed in a quicker, less theatrical way. The full ordeal of the sack with all the animals was likely reserved for those cases the Romans really wanted to make an example of. Some historians even suspect that the complete four-animal version might have been more threatened than done, a frightful deterrent that hung over everyone's head. After all, just hearing about this punishment would send a chill down anyone's spine. But whether every detail was always carried out or not, the Poena Cullei remained on the law books and in the Roman imagination for centuries. In fact, it lasted so long that when the Roman Empire turned Christian, the emperor still kept this penalty around for a while. That's right, even the influence of Christianity didn't immediately put a stop to it. Emperors like Constantine in the 4th century AD renewed the punishment for parricides, and the very idea of the sack was so powerful it survived into later legal codes. Fast forward 1,000 years. Medieval scholars, fascinated by ancient Rome, included the punishment of the sack in their own law books, trying to copy the terrifying justice of the Romans. Fortunately, by then, they often didn't use real animals. There are stories of medieval courts sewing painted animal symbols onto the sack instead of live creatures, as if that was enough to capture the spirit of the punishment. But shockingly, there are a few records of the actual deed being done, even in the Middle Ages and beyond. One of the last recorded cases comes from 18th century Germany, as late as the 1700s, where a man who killed his parent was apparently thrown into a river in a sack for his crime. Over 1,800 years after Rome first did it, the horror of Poena Cullei was still casting its dark shadow. It was finally abolished for good by the late 18th century, as more modern forms of justice took hold. Looking back now, the punishment of the sack is one of the darkest innovations in legal history. It shows us a side of Rome that is far from the marble statues and grand temples. It's the Rome that could be brutally merciless when it felt deeply offended. Yet it also teaches us something important. How much love and respect for parents meant in that world. The Romans figured that if someone could violate the most sacred bond, parent and child, then no ordinary punishment would suffice. It had to be extreme as the crime itself. So, as gruesome as this story has been, there's a grim lesson shining through. It underscores the value of family bonds by showing the absolute horror reserved for those who broke them. And it highlights how far justice has evolved. Today, we consider ourselves fortunate, and rightfully so, that even the worst criminals are not subjected to tortures out of a nightmare. Understanding Poena Cullei can make us appreciate living in a time when human rights and mercy temper justice, where even those who do wrong are treated as fellow humans, something the Romans, in this case, refused to do.